Alright everybody, I have yet to really try out this vlog thing, but I figured now's as good a time as any because I have so much work to do in the next, I guess like 5 hours total, but I have a lot of revisions that I need to finish in the next 2 hours, and I've been getting distracted, so I came back home. I was at a coffee shop most of the day. I finished 1.5 out of 3 stories in terms of revising, and I have to finish up the next 1.5 in the next 2 hours, plus do like a little character analysis of a character in Goon Squad. So I need to basically write straight through for 2 hours straight. And then also I need to finish Normal People, of which I have about 100 pages left after that, because I'm calling my sister tonight to talk through that for an essay she's working on. And if I have time after that, I'm gonna read the rest of this, of which I have very little left. But this would be good. Gonna film myself, hold myself accountable. Hopefully let you guys a little, I don't normally write this disorganized, but my roommate's gone, so I wanted to use the full space, the little kitchen area we have, not just my bedroom. So I'll be on the couch, there are papers everywhere. Gonna work for like 3 or 4 hours with a couple breaks every now and then finish up by talking a little bit about the project I'm actually working on, this sort of like novella I'm putting together, which is part of the bigger novel project I was talking about in some of the videos this winter. And then I'll talk a little bit about the books as well if I get around to finishing those. So that's the plan. Hope you guys enjoy. Hope this isn't too messy of a video, but I think it'll be fun. And I'll see you guys in a couple hours.
Babe, you know I never listen. How's I supposed to learn? 2 hands in the fire. Do you expect me not to burn? I've been missing something greater. I've been missing something slow. My heart beats like a traitor. It is nighttime now, like 10 p.m. Gonna do a little bit more reading, watch some basketball. I got a lot of work done today actually, probably more than I thought I would. So gonna have a nice night, made some tea. I'm gonna try and get most of the way through That's All I Know by Elisa Levy. Yeah, so my heart beats like a traitor. It won't lose the urge to go.
Hello everybody, it is one day later. I have finished officially everything for the semester. I'm so happy. I did finish up my novella, which I'm going to talk a little bit about. I'm actually going to do a more like in-depth video about a specific story I wrote, one that I'm really happy with that is like tied into this whole novel thing, and that I'll like read a little bit from, but this is just going to be kind of like general how I went about things, how I'm like trying to tie things together, how I'm trying to make this project longer, and then finish Normal People, so I'll talk a little bit about that as well. But yeah, starting with the project for my workshop, we had to write 3 interconnected stories, like a novella in stories type thing, with like the Goon Squad as a model. Again, like the way I saw the Goon Squad, it was more of like separate stories than something that actually came together, but recurring characters, it fits, I suppose. And so I wrote 3 stories working with the like teenage, early 20s boy from the story I've read to you guys that I worked on over winter break. So that character, who I didn't really have a sense of, that whole story actually, I have a couple pages of that, but it really isn't going anywhere. So this is where I'm actually like finding an actual like story. And then now I'm returning to that now that I'm done with these and kind of trying to, it's an interesting experience, like seeing you've kind of developed the character and he came from this place, but he's not really a character here. So it's like trying to actually create a story there. That's been probably more difficult than any of this stuff, but a couple different chapters. So one is from the perspective of this character DK, who's working at this lodge that the main character Smith is working at, which is set in Oregon on the coast, about like 3 years removed from present day Chicago. So the chapters are kind of bouncing back and forth between present day Chicago, Oregon about three years ago, and then there's also a high school flashback, which is probably my favorite story I've ever written. And I still don't think it's complete. I want it to be longer, but it is kind of a complete arc. So yeah. And then the third story I wrote was kind of a conversation between Smith and Reese, who are both in the first story that I showed you guys this winter. And I guess that was kind of finding a sense of character. I've really gone into this blind, like really having no idea of who each character is or what I want to happen in the story, mainly because I found like planning things out doesn't work so well for me. I kind of go off the rails anyway, just in a worse, like it's just harder and more difficult than it needs to be if I kind of feel like I need to stick to something. Also, I'm really interested in kind of those like separations between story, like interiority, physicality, things that, for example, in the first story or the third story I mentioned here, that I'm talking about, like, oh, it's basically just a conversation between Smith and Reese. It was just really heavy dialogue, and it was trying to advance like character, like aspects of character, and trying to advance like plot points, and that really isn't. It just doesn't feel good to me. I don't enjoy reading that as much, and that's not to say like in general, like there are plenty of authors who do that really well. I just feel like I'm really interested in a couple different things, namely the sort of reactions to anxiety, whether that be like tics or like self-soothing techniques, those kinds of like people pulling on their lips and people clenching their fist or closing their eyes really tight, and sort of like the different things you're experiencing, like really, again, like super like sensation based, because I feel like, I don't know, I have no idea what my draw to that is. It's not really something I like look for when I'm reading, I don't think. If anything, it makes me uncomfortable a little bit when I'm reading. So hopefully it doesn't appear that way when I'm to other people. But I don't know. It's just, that's something I've been really, really interested in. And then working a lot in like memory. So like the high school story I'm going to talk about in another video is second person. It's Smith's second person, but he's kind of like trying to dissociate from this memory he's having. So I wrote it in second person. It's meant to convey that. I don't know how well it works. I hope it works well. I really like it. It's definitely like definitely the strongest thing I feel like I've written. But also it addresses certain themes like you know, young straight male desire. I'm really interested in like this susceptibility that seems to be going on for, you know, young men to these like, I mean, insane ideas, right? I mean, you're talking about like Christian nationalism, like far right-wing ideology that seems to be very appealing to a lot of young, especially white and straight men. And that's something that's scary to write about, but also something like I feel like I want to be. Again, I'm not writing on a theme level, writing on a character level, but there's something that's interesting there that's really not being talked about. And if it is being talked about, it's being talked about in like a way that's too forgiving, I think. Like this idea of like, oh, everybody's like lonely, like loneliness epidemic, like what's going on there? Why is that, you know, that thing that seems to be self-inflicted, like really, so I don't know. Again, like I'm really just trying to look at like what outside influence does, how people are when they're with themselves versus with other people, you know, things that I feel like books are the best at really bringing out. But there's also certain things I want to write about that are very scary to me. And I think there's a lot of people to look to and be like, wow, look at that person who, you know, there are writers I know who put out fantastic novels, and parts of their personality that aren't apparent when you're talking to them really pop out in the writing, oftentimes like really hard and rough subjects that you know you don't converse about all the time that pop out, and things that might be embarrassing, you know, for, you know, their parents to read or whatever, but it's really interesting and somebody needs to write about it. So I don't know, I think there's that aspect going on. And then, I mean, on a surface level, it's really just trying to tie all these things together. I'm going way out of order with this. Obviously I'm going to be doing research and writing essays mainly this summer, but I'm taking like a thesis class next fall, which is going to be putting together, you know, hopefully close to like 100 pages consecutively. And so I'm going to be working towards that this summer as well, so that I can do like more revisions in the fall and kind of have like a draft going on. But yeah, I really need to finish that first section that comes at the beginning, I think, before I can, you know, come back to all of these. But I'm really proud to, like, it was a super challenging workshop to write 3 stories. I've never had to do that in an undergrad workshop, especially like 3 interconnected stories. So I don't know. I mean, they're probably each around 12 to 15 pages. The high school one's a little bit shorter, but yeah, I mean, like 30, 35 pages. I definitely don't usually write that much, especially because like I wrote short stories for other classes too. So I mean, there was a a lot of writing going on, and I'm just glad to like have this material. I think that's the best thing, is to get it on the page and then do all this like thinking afterwards. And yeah, again, I'm gonna have a video very soon where I talk about and read from one of the stories. I might also I posted on Substack something from the second story that I wrote for this, like kind of that first scene, which got heavily revised because there just wasn't, I don't know, it's interesting. When I put it on the Substack, I was like, oh, I really like this. But now I'm like, there's no differentiation in those characters. So I went through and revised that whole thing. Like, the discussion they're having is different. The way that, you know, DK wakes up and navigates to the kitchen, like it's all completely different. And so I think I might do that and talk a little bit about revision. Again, I know I'm super behind on the Substack. I'm going to get the Normal People essay out in the next few days, I swear. And so, yeah, that's going to be a bigger essay on Substack, but I'm just going to talk a little bit about, maybe talk through what I want to write about so I can get that kicked off. I don't know, maybe that'll help. But yeah, so I reread Normal People. I would say that when I started this channel, I really didn't, this is kind of stupid because it's probably going to be true a year from now too, but like a year ago, I really didn't know how to read in certain ways. Like, I feel like I'm learning a lot more about what I enjoy, what's good versus what's bad, and then what's up for opinion, and like things like that, because these characters, I think the first time I reviewed this book, which would have been in August last year, so I don't know, like 8-9 months ago, I was so focused on the fact that like these characters were bad and it seems like people like them. Why are they liking these bad characters? Whatever. Whereas now I think people don't like bad characters enough. And when I say like, it doesn't have to be like, oh, this is your role model. But I think you have to appreciate both characters you can and can't relate to, both characters you like and don't like. There's still certain books that I know like a good reader would do a better job with, that I am still pushing out and being like, that's not for me, like Lolita and things like that. I'm still not changing my opinion on that yet. But anyways, back to what I was talking about. Yeah, I think that this book is really interesting for a couple reasons. One, because of how character focused it is. And Rooney's writing is all that. But this book is so much better than all of her other books. And I can't even debate it. I mean, the first book I actually read of hers was, I think, Beautiful World, Where Are You, right when it came out. And I liked that. I reread it and I didn't like it as much. This one holds up for sure. Conversation with Friends and Intermezzo I didn't like that much. So I've been really thinking a lot about what is so good about this book. And I think part of it is the knowledge she has of both issues that people don't understand, and then also the knowledge that people don't understand them, and the way she goes about showcasing the characters dealing with these things. There's a couple really interesting examples. One is like the Ireland housing crisis, right? Because there's that section where Marianne and Connell are in this like abandoned like mansion basically, and they don't understand why it's abandoned, and they say like something to do with capitalism or something to do with like whatever, and they don't really know what's going on. And so I think that's meant to, things like that, things like, you know, Connell being like way too judgmental when he's at a reading, and he says things like, you know, people are only here because like they're treating literature as a social class. Like buying a book is buying your way into a social class. That social class being people who read, or rather not people who read, people who own books, because nobody's reading the books. They're just buying them because that's what you do if you're, you know, middle upper class and you're university educated and you're white and you're whatever. Like these things that are all, you know, very appearance focused. So there's a couple examples of that. There's examples of, you know, that sort of like modern relationship dynamic, especially like dealing with like masculinity and like Connell's uncomfortability that he's so much more, he's much more physically strong than Marianne, and also she's like very willing to like let him do whatever, and that scares him. And so like that kind of dynamic, the idea that like what is like a healthy relationship. Like we know what's not a healthy relationship, but we don't know what is one. Like this modern idea of a relationship, like removing gender roles, things like that. The point is there's a lot of really interesting things she hits on, but she does it from a character perspective, like characters who are largely unaware. And I don't think Rooney's unaware. I think Rooney actually seems like insanely intelligent. And that's what makes her writing so unique, is like, I've heard her talk a couple times. Like she's just like, I start with characters and I put them in situations and I see how they react. So it's almost not using any personal experience in fiction writing, which is I mean, I've largely never heard of that, like, from anyone else. Like, everybody's using, you know, they're inspired by some, like, you know what I mean? So it's very interesting. And the problem is that, you know, when you start to use similar characters over and over again, it cannot be as, you know, thrilling to read about. But it's still a very interesting technique. And I would say, like, Normal People is basically like she hit the nail on the head. Like, everything lined up perfectly. It's so well constructed. I think it's refreshing to people because, I don't know what degree she has, but it seems to me like this is like a non-workshopped book. Like, the writing is messy at times. There are certain, like, structural, aside from the book structure, like when we get to the sentence structure, sometimes there's, you know, things that shouldn't be there. A lot of times, like, she follows this kind of weird, this person did this is what they thought about it, and then this is what the truth actually is, and that kind of gets, like, easy to hook on, and you can kind of see that, and there's, like, you should get rid of this part here. And so there's certain things that, like, weren't cut that maybe should have been cut. But at the same time, I think that's, like, also kind of, like, refreshing to people. But again, there's a, stylistically, it's not the best, but it's still good writing, and she's still very smart. And the dialogue's wonderful. And yeah, I think that this is kind of like, you know, you have a style and it happens to just all click. And tons of credit to her. I mean, I think she's super talented, and I, you know, could listen to her interviews 1,000 times. And she seems to have, like, a grasp on these feelings that, you know, other people are unable to describe or understand. And I think that's what makes this book so appealing to young people. Again, always writing about college educated, from a small town, living in the big city, white, skinny characters is not always the best, but she also does class conflict here in a way that's not super common right now. Like, nobody's writing about class conflict. It's actually really crazy. You have to go back a lot of times to older writing. That's pretty ridiculous. And so she does that really well. Again, like, but it's through the lens of these characters who don't really understand things. And Connell is like, he's thinking through these decisions he's making. He's thinking through how, you know, things look. He's thinking through, like, you know, Marianne, like, I met her because my mother cleans her mother's floors. Like, how does that look? Marianne doesn't think about it at all. So you're understanding these tensions on a very character level, and not necessarily like a plot or like there's, you know what I mean? So it's really just a relationship dynamic the whole time, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But it's a really good one and a really interesting one. And yeah, it's definitely, I mean, reading it again, I thought it was great. I don't necessarily know what, like, I take from this in terms of writing. I don't think there's there's nothing here I'm like, oh, I should do that, because I feel like it's either just completely natural to her and something you can't copy, or something I don't want, you know what I mean? So I don't know. But it's a great book, and yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess I'd encourage anybody who hasn't read it to read it, but I feel like everybody has. I also feel like she's thinking about her readers a lot in this book, especially with, like, that idea of, like, she says, like, you know, all authors participate in that sort of, like, social class, like, buy a book to belong to the social class of readers. So there could be, like, some, you know, weird feelings around being, like, a best-selling author now. It could be part of the reason she's kind of just hinting at these issues through character dynamics. But yeah, it's a beautiful book, and I'll just leave it there. I'll have another video out soon. I'm going back to Chicago this weekend, but I'll try and film something. I'm just about to finish the Elisa Levy book. I'll do a video on that short story I mentioned. I've got quite a big reading list for the summer, so I'm going to get started on that. More interviews coming soon. Thank you to everybody who's been watching. I hope you enjoyed this vlog. I'm going to try and, like, do this a little bit more. Maybe, like, you know, just writing in cafes, but also, like, vlogging some, like, travels and different things, because I feel like that's fun. Also, yeah, no hate on, like, the music, please. I feel like I don't think I can use, like, actual songs, so I just, like, play guitar, and it was, like, I literally wrote that, like, right before I recorded it on my iPhone. So it wasn't like, it's not a fully formed song. I do have some that are, like, recorded in studio that maybe I'll put in some of the next couple ones, because I recorded some finished songs a couple months ago, and I think that'll be cool to share. But yeah, anyways, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you so soon. Hope you're all having a great week or weekend or whenever you're watching this. Yeah, peace.